Good morning to you. Welcome to Kingdom Shakers right here on Life 97.5 FM, where we chat with a believer in Christ who is using their gifts to fulfill their purpose in this earth, shaking up the kingdom of the enemy and building up the kingdom of Jesus Christ. And I'm so pleased, so honored to take it home right here to Barbados as we chat with none other than attorney at law, artist, writer, and speaker, Jewelle Maynard Roberts. She's also an author, so we're going to be hearing very much about that. So hello, Jewelle, welcome.
Hello. Welcome. Thank you so much for having me today. Thank you. It's truly an honor to be here.
Yes. You're so very gifted, and I'd love to hear all about you, Jewelle, and what you're doing right now in the kingdom of God. Well, I like to start from the beginning. I like to start from the foundation. So please tell us a bit about yourself. You're an attorney at law, artist, writer, speaker, and my goodness, you lead worship, you write songs. So yeah, just songwriter. Writer alone is heavy. Right? but to mention, of course, you're also a wife and a mother. So yes. I don't know how as women we balance all these things, but we're gonna hear from Jewelle. Maybe she'll tell us the secret today. I don't know. Well, welcome. So tell us about yourself, Jewelle.
Okay, well, I'll start at what I would say is the beginning, which is, in my formative years, I really, truly had a passion for the arts. I always loved art. I loved the music. I remember being at school wanting to do both art and music for CXC and having to argue with the teachers over, yes, I should be allowed to do both art and music because I was really so passionate about the arts and I really loved the arts. And I honestly imagined myself going into a career in the arts after I left school. However, as life would have it, I ended up applying for law. Following the guidance of, those around you who are older and who want to make sure you have something to fall back on. So I ended up going into law and going off to law school and so on as a result of that. And as far as ministry was concerned during those years, my focus was really, I was still very much art focused, even though I was studying law, even though I was in university for that, I was still very art focused. So I was very much into songwriting at the time. And I did do some work with some artists locally in the gospel arena. I was really pursuing that area of ministry because I felt as though, that was not necessarily my calling, but it was my gifting at the time. At that time, I would not say that I was walking yet in my purpose. I think I was walking in my giftings and kind of doing what I wanted to do, kind of exploring.
Which would lead you to your purpose, really.
Yes, kind of exploring those giftings. So I did do a lot of work in songwriting. I studied some courses. I even taught a few classes in songwriting at one point in time. I really, really was passionate about music and writing and the arts and so on. And then I came to a point in my life where God began to kind of interrupt all of what I wanted to do.
He's good at that,
Yes, he is. He is very good at that. And I remember back when I was in law school, I remember God trying to knock on my door and he was saying to me, I need you to go into ministry. I need you to consecrate. There's work that I have for you to do. And I was like, Lord, how do you mean there's work for me to do? I was a PK. I was a pastor's daughter. My parents were in ministry. My mother is also a pastor. So can you imagine you're a pastor's kid, you get away for the first time in your life to go off to law school for 2 years, to get out your parents' house, to be away from the eyes of everybody who is watching, and you want some freedom. And the Lord is like, I want you to consecrate. I have work for you to do.
Oh my.
At that point, I was like, Lord, I'm not about it. I'm not here for it. I'm not on that. Okay. I am getting my 2 years of freedom. Okay, Lord, I'm not on that. And in that point of time, I entered into what I call my 7 years of wandering, to be honest. because during that time, I was still very much doing what I wanted to do, because the Lord was there knocking on my door, telling me that he had where he wanted me to go. And I was like, I'm not up for that. I'm not up for that. I'm doing my own thing. So I continued, even though being in ministry, yes, I was worship leading at the time. I was writing songs. I was doing all kinds of things, but they were all what I wanted to do. They were all my agenda and my plan. I was not interested in whatever plan that was that God had for me. And then in 2014, everything came full circle again, and God came back and he was like, so remember 7 years ago, we had a conversation, you know, there's some things that I need for you to do. And I'm like, Lord, we had this again. We already had this discussion, you know, like I'm not up for it, because having been a pastor's child, having been in that experience, I did not want that for my children, to be honest. I did not want that for my children. And even when I met my husband, we were both in a space of trying to run away from what God was calling us to do, to be honest. We were honest with ourselves. We were trying to run away, both of us. So when we got married, we didn't have that agenda in mind. We didn't really have that purpose agenda in mind, because we were trying to escape the purpose in the first place.
Right.
And God really, around 2014, he began to really press upon me and impress upon me that he was calling me, impress upon me that he wanted me to step out and to do some things in ministry for him. He wanted me to teach. He wanted me to share the word of God with others. And I really began to consider that I may need to say yes to what God was saying to me. So I did so with quite a bit of reluctance, I would say. I was reluctantly saying yes, but I said yes. And nonetheless, that moment in 2014 was when my entire life just turned upside down, literally upside down.
Wow.
Everything went crazy. When I say it went crazy, it went crazy. And between 2014 and about 2020, there were so many things that I went through in that period of time. And the first thing that the Lord took me through was, in that same year, he said to me, okay, your husband is going to become the pastor of the church. I was very upset about that. Okay, I was like, Lord, I'm not up for that. Okay, that was not in the plan. We were trying to get away from that. Okay, God, I'm not up for that. He was like, your husband's going to become the pastor of the church. And I, okay. And then he began to say to me, you're going to have to leave your job. And I was like, but Lord, I like my job though. I enjoy my job. It's a lot of work, yes. And I have to work hard sometimes. That's okay. I don't mind, but I like my job and I like the people that I work with and I like my salary, God. What are you doing?
That part.
You know what I'm saying? How am I going to explain leaving my job to my friends and my family and all these people? What's this, And God spoke that to me. He kept pressing for about 6 months. God was pressing and pressing and pressing. He was like, you're going to have to leave this job. You're going to have to leave this job. You're going to have to leave this job. And at the end of that 6 months period, an opportunity opened at work for a voluntary separation package. And the Lord was like, you're going to leave this job.
Whoa.
And so I filled out the forms, I accepted the package, and my boss convinced me to stay 6 months more in their efforts to keep me. She wanted me to stay, so she asked me to stay 6 months more. And in spite of that 6 months, the Lord was still like, at the end of the 6 months, you still got to go, right? You know that, right? You know that. I just give you a little leeway, but at the end of these 6 months, you have to leave the job. And I left the job. I left, and that year, 2015, I believe, the day that I left that job, I remember so distinctly. My husband picked me up from work. Ricardo picked me up from work, and we were driving home. And I remember where we were and everything, and it's imprinted in my mind. He gave me a letter, and when I opened that letter said, at the end of whatever month we were in, I think we were in August. At the end of August this year, this job that he was in was going to end. So his job, I literally just left my job under the obedience of what God was calling me to do. And that same week, the week that I left my job, he got a letter from his job saying he has to go as well. And I'm like, Lord, you gotta be messing with me, because I don't understand. I did what you told me to do for a whole year. You told me about this. I did what you told me to do. And this is what happens. So that was crazy. But anyway, God worked things out that he was able to find other work. I started to work independently on my own, in my own practice and so on. And in that same year, I got pregnant. So in that year, 2015, I got pregnant.
Whoa.
And I had some plans to travel from before, because I'm a planner. I plan things way in advance. I had the tickets before I knew I was pregnant. And I said, well, I'm not going to do what I had intended to do. I was going to go to a conference, a work-related conference. I said, there's going to be too much stress on my body now that I'm pregnant. Instead, once I get the all clear from my doctor, I'm going to go and I will travel. And I will get some things for the baby and relax by my family. And that will be it. It'll be a baby moon. We'll call it a baby moon and we'll be back, right?
Right.
So off we go on our little baby moon. And 2 weeks into that trip, I did not do anything. I'm telling you, I didn't do anything. I didn't do any running up and down. I wasn't in any mall, crazy shopping, nothing like that. I relaxed and took my time for that 2 weeks. And 2 weeks into that trip, I began to feel some pain that would not go away. It wouldn't go away. It was discomfort. It was pain. My cousin took me to the hospital and they told me, you are in labor. And 3 days later, my son was born prematurely at 24 weeks, right?
Whoa.
24 weeks, he was born prematurely in New York. I was not home at the time. I was in New York. He was born prematurely. He was only 1 pound and 15 ounces when he was born.
My God.
And that was devastating to me, because can you imagine the size of, he was so small. He was so tiny. Like I could barely hold him. If I held him, he would probably be from like here to here. He was so small. And I remember looking at him and crying and saying, God, what am I going to do? What was this? Where did this come from? You know? And there was one day, 2 weeks later, I was sitting in that hospital and I was next to his incubator and my phone rang. And my brother is on the phone and he says 2 words to me and he says, Daddy died. This is 2 weeks after my son was just delivered prematurely. I am out of the country. Remember, we just had the whole job situation that same year and everything.
Wow.
2 weeks into that, my father dies. And my father at the time was living in Trinidad. I could not attend his funeral because I had to stay by my son's bedside. I didn't feel comfortable. You know, you're in the US of A, and I really did not want that I would leave and come back and find that my child was under the care of the state because I left my child in the hospital. You understand?
Exactly, right.
I stayed with my child and I could not attend the funeral in person. I had to watch the funeral on a video. And that was really devastating for me. I really loved my father. He was so close to me. And I remember during that time as well, when we got to the end of that 3-month period, because he was hospitalized, my son was hospitalized for 3 months. At the end of that period, we were getting ready to come home. And my husband, at the time, we were planning, I believe we were booking our flights and getting ready and everything. And he gets a call to find out that his father has also passed.
Oh my word.
Literally, he took a flight. I remember we were coming back home. He takes a flight from the US to Barbados. We come home together. I come out onto the tarmac and go with my mom to come home, and he goes around the corner and takes another flight to go to Trinidad to bury his dad.
Wow.
It was crazy. And in total, in those years, between about 2014 to 2016, we lost 8 family members.
What?
8 family members. We attended funeral after funeral after funeral. 8 family members. We had 2 car accidents in that space of time. There were the job changes and losses and so on. And it was just crazy.
My God.
And then as time passed, my son is growing and I'm observing him and I'm realizing that there's some delays and some setbacks, which I expected, because in the hospital, the 100 million things that could possibly happen to your child because they were born premature.
Yeah.
I did anticipate that there might be some delays. And I said, you know what, he's going to catch up. That was my belief. He's going to catch up. He's going to catch up. And then one day, he was about 2 or 3 years old. I remember attending an appointment and there was a parent in the waiting room who was asking me a question. And the gentleman was saying to me, has your son been diagnosed? And I was like, diagnosed? What are you talking about? Diagnosed? Diagnosed with what? He was born premature, you know, he has some delays. autism. You know, he looks like he might have autism. He looks just like
that.
and I have a son and he was telling me about his son and what they went through and everything. And I'm not hearing a word he said because all my mind is just stuck on, what are you talking about?
Exactly.
That autism thing comes from left field, totally left field. And I remember going into the appointment and the evaluation of him at that time wasn't really very good. I remember coming home and I had a conversation with another a friend of mine who said the same thing pretty much. You know what, I think I've noticed some things that suggest that he might have autism. And I remember it was like literally like the ground underneath me disappeared. That's how it felt.
Yes, yes.
So earth shattering because I was not anywhere near that space. Nowhere. I was saying my son is going to come back. He just has some setbacks. He's going to catch up. It's going to be okay. And that diagnosis came for us. And I remember over the years kind of having to cope with the grief of, because when you have a child with special needs, especially a diagnosis that you did not anticipate or were unprepared for, you cope with the grief of losing what you thought you would expect, you know, in terms of the child that you expected to have, the vision you had for that child. You might have already started to make some plans of what this child could do and be and so on. Not that you're limiting the child that you do have, or you're not grateful for the child that you have, or you don't love the child that you have, but you grieve the idea of what that child might have been or would have been. And that was a different kind of grief that I coped with during that time. And as the years passed, I found that I really began to struggle with managing my emotional space because of all that we had been through. We went to all these funerals, we had all these deaths, we had these accidents, we had the job losses, we had all these things going on. We had daddy passing, we had my son's birth, we had his diagnosis with autism, we had all of this. And I felt like I wasn't processing it properly. I was doing my best, you know, you're going to church, you're doing everything you're supposed to do. And I'm not processing all of this. And what began to happen is that I found that every year for a period of time, there would be a time where I would just be sad. And I wouldn't know how to fix that sadness. I wouldn't know how to fix that grief or address that grief. And eventually, I got pregnant in 2019, at the end of 2019, just before the pandemic started. And at the end of 2019, I'm going into the end of 2019, the Lord began to say to me, you're going to have to close your business for a little while, because I was pregnant and the pregnancy wasn't going very smoothly for me. It was a bit challenging from an emotional standpoint, from a physical standpoint. He said, you're going to have to take a break from work, take some time away. You're going to have to close your business for right now.
Yes.
And even as he is telling me that, my husband comes home again with the news that his place of work is closing down. And I'm like, Lord,
Lord, wow.
Why is this coming again? We've been here.
Yes.
You know, and we really had to come to a place of learning about dependence on God and faith in God. I think that was a big part of what he was trying to teach us during that season.
Yes.
But nonetheless, that was just a big shock to us in that time. And you know, you're there and you're concerned. You're human, so you're concerned. You're concerned about how the future is going to look like. You know, what are we going to do? How are we going to manage? And I remember after my daughter was born, I remember like I felt like the weight of all of that just began to press on me, because you know, in that postpartum time, there's always that, you know, there's that danger of that postpartum blues, as they call it, or the postpartum depression. And for me, because of all the trauma of the past few years, combined with the pregnancy and the birth and the lack of sleep and all of that, I really got into a space where I was like, God, I would rather not live. Honestly, I feel as though this is too much for me to carry, too much for me to bear. I don't know if I can keep going, essentially. And I remember feeling like the enemy was coming for my life. I honestly felt like he was going to take me out. And I remember saying to God, I have to fight. And I remember I would get up and I would pray, and I would really, really seek God. I would really pray. I would really say, God, you have to rescue me from this, because I cannot die. I cannot die here, this is not, I have more to do. I can't die. This cannot be the end of my life. That voice is not a voice of God. I know that that's not you. So Lord, can you please help me? And I remember God brought me to this place in Psalm 23. I was at the time writing a devotional, and it was about Psalm 23. And it talks about walking through the valley of the shadow of death and fearing no evil. And God began to speak to me, and he began to say, you will not die in this valley. You're not going to die here. This is not the end of your story. You're not going to die here. You're not going to die. And then he said to me, forgiveness is your lifeline, and forgiveness is going to rescue you from the pain that you are in. And at first, my response to God was like, God, what do you mean? And then he began to open that up for me. He began to reveal that for me. Later that year, that same year that my daughter was born, 2020, I began to write a devotional series about forgiveness. It was called Rescue Me, the Lifeline of Forgiveness. It's the same title as my book. And in writing that series, God began to open to me the areas of my life that needed that healing of forgiveness. I needed to forgive God because there were so many things I was angry with him about. There were so many things I was disappointed about. There were so many things that didn't go the way I thought they should. I had to forgive him. I had to come back to that closeness with him again. So he said, my child, you need to forgive me. And you know, sometimes we don't talk about forgiving God. That's not something we talk about a lot in our church circles. We mostly focus our conversations on forgiveness, on forgiving others. But there's so many of us who are carrying a little hurt concerning God and concerning what has not showed up, what we've prayed for that has not come to pass. All of those unanswered prayers or broken dreams. Sometimes we blame God for the things that happen in our life. And so I had to forgive him.
So this was the start then of your writing journey, devotionals to women, because you have this latest one, but you have ones before as well. I'm seeing from 2018 straight through till 2020 and 2021 with Rescue Me, the Lifeline of Forgiveness. And so what then would you say to people who are listening right now, especially women, who can attest to maybe not all, but some of your story? And they would have heard, you know, the push and pull, the push and pull that you would have had with God. What would you say to them in terms of just letting go and allowing God to do what he needs to do?
Ooh, surrender is such a huge part of the forgiveness story. It doesn't immediately come to mind, but a big reason why we do not effectively forgive God, ourselves, or others is because we fail to surrender to what God is doing in our lives. We fail to surrender to what he is doing, which allows us the freedom to forgive him and to let go of what we may feel he has done against us. We fail to surrender to his vision for us and the person that he's calling us to be, because when we hold on to any thought of unforgiveness against ourselves, when we say, I can't forgive myself because I did this or I did that, we fail to hold on to or to grasp and to surrender to the version of us that he is creating. Amen. If we fail to forgive others, we fail to surrender to the direction that he is leading us in as regards to how we should deal with our fellow man and our brothers and our sisters. So surrender is such a big part of it. And we have to come to that position where we say, God, in spite of all that has happened, in spite of everything I've gone through, I surrender. I say yes. I say yes to whatever you want to do. I say yes to however you want to do it. And in whatever way you choose to do it, I say yes. And if we can get to that place of surrender, I think that helps to start the healing process of forgiveness for us in relation to forgiving God, ourselves, and others as well.
Amen. Wow. Well, you know what? I'm seeing all these things that you would have done, Jewelle. You would have written songs from 2010, released songs, a song that was used in collaboration with UNDP, French, Grenada, and Barbados Red Cross Societies. Yes. You would have helped co-written with Nikovia, even Barbadian artist, for her album. And you would have had all these devotionals. And excuse me, as a pastor's wife, as having the Rescue Me Foundation. We have just a couple more minutes. If you could just let us know maybe one or two major lessons that you would have learned, having looked back and saying, you know what, God was really with me. What lesson have you learned from all this?
Ooh, there's so many lessons to choose from.
Well, a couple. You don't have to limit it to one.
So many lessons, but I would say for sure that aligning ourselves to God's will for our lives and his direction for our lives is perhaps one of the greatest steps that we can take towards moving into a place of healing, a place of restoration for ourselves and for others and for those around us. I think that sometimes we forget that when God, we may feel as though we are not enough. We may feel as though we don't have what it takes. We may feel as though because of all that we've been through, that we are not adequately equipped to do what God is calling or aligning us to do. But what I am learning is that in spite of the mess of our lives, in spite of the imperfection of our lives, in spite of all that we go through, if we can align ourselves to his will and align ourselves to his purpose, he is going to work everything out. He's going to work everything out. And even in the time of writing all those devotions, what I found is that God would use each one to work something out within me. First of all, before it was worked out in others, right? He worked something out within me. And I found that being in that place of surrender and saying, yes, God, I'm going to share what you're sharing with me with others, allows me also to heal. It allows me also to process. It allows me also to experience the changing power of his word in my own life. So that is a major lesson that I would leave with your listeners. I'd also like to let them know that I have a free gift for them. If they want to access for free, the Forgiveness Fast is a 14-day time of prayer and fasting. There are videos that were recorded. It was done as an event, a live online event, leading up to the release of my book, Rescue Me, the Lifeline of Forgiveness. And that is available absolutely free on www.therescuelifeline.com. You can go, you can look, and you can click on the Forgiveness Fast. And when you go there, you can access that resource. 14 days, it comes with a PDF download and all the videos from that time of prayer and fasting.
Excellent.
And it's a blessing to the audience.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So the Rescue Lifeline, and there you'll see all about the Rescue Foundation as well. We have to make a plug for that, because you and Pastor Roberts, your husband, are all about food security, and you have that ministry there, and it's absolutely fantastic. I would say that when I went onto your website, I was like, oh, okay. She knows what she's doing. That's good. Top class, top class. Congratulations on all that God has allowed you to accomplish.
Thank you.
This time. So wish you all God's best. So one more time, how can people connect with you, Jewelle? Okay. And how can they get your devotionals as well?
Sure. There are a couple of avenues. The Precious Project is my women's ministry. It is a resource for women, and you can connect with me through the Precious Project on Instagram and Facebook, the Precious Project BB, at the Precious Project BB. So if you go and you look at any of those pages, you will see me there. You can message me privately if you need to, and you can reach me there. You can also reach out to us if you're interested in the Rescue Lifeline side of things. And if you're interested in the Rescue Foundation, our email address is contact@therescuelifeline.com. And there's also our website. There's a contact form on the website as well, www.therescuelifeline.com. And you can reach out to us if you are interested in accessing anything that we may have to offer as time progresses.
Thank you, Jewelle Maynard Roberts. God bless you. And we wish you all God's best in everything that he has for you.
Thank you so much.
So that's author, writer, speaker, attorney at law, Jewelle Maynard Roberts, right here on Kingdom Shakers. And I'm Krista J. Paul. Thank you so much for listening. Hope you're blessed. God bless you.
God bless you too.